Hey, this is Kenny Aronoff, and you're on Musicians on the Record. Hit it!
This is huge, musicians on the record. Bring it on.
Hi, welcome to Musicians on the Record. I'm David Ward. You've heard the music, now hear their story, and you've definitely heard this guy's music, and we're going to talk all about his story today. The great Kenny Aronoff is on the show. Welcome, Kenny.
How you doing? Great to be here.
I'm so grateful to have you on the show. It's a pleasure to talk with you today. Let me just run down. People have seen you. They've certainly heard you, but you're the drummer for John Mellencamp, John Fogerty. It's actually kind of easier to talk about who you haven't played with because there's so many folks out there. I've actually been reading your book, Sex, Drums, and Rock and Roll. You got some great stories in this book. You're also a drum educator. Let's talk about the book and what inspired you to write this at this point in your career.
I didn't want to write the book. I don't have enough time to write books, but I was turned on to the idea by a writer, Jake Brown, who was interviewing for he interviewed me for a Joe Satriani book, and I just done chicken for it, and he said, no, you just dictate to me, and I just naively, no, I wasn't naive, I intuitively knew it was going to be harder than it was, because what I found, what I thought was going to happen is I'd dictate everything to him. He'd write a book, it'd be an Oscar, boom, done.
Yeah.
It's not that simple. This 2-year project turned into a 4-year project. Problem is I don't look back at what I've done. I only care about what I'm going to do. What I've done is done. I'll think about that when I'm 100. So I've been on I found this out by doing research through writing the book. I've been on over 300 million records sold. I mean, 3 of them were like 40 million record sellers. 2 Celine Dion records and a Meatloaf record, Bat Out of Hell 2. I was on like 8 million sold records by Ricky Martin. I could go on. There's Michelle Branch, Avril Lavigne, Bon Jovi. It goes on and on. But the point is that at one point I thought the book, it came out 600 pages, and I thought the book was not good enough. I was trying to buy it back and bury it. And the publisher said, just chill down. Next phase is the writer, is the editor. Get the editor. He will shape this thing. And they did. They shaped it from 600 pages to 350. But ultimately, I had to get involved with every page. I read every page, rewrote pages. I was so involved with this to make it sound like me. And I'm sure as you read it, it sounds like me, right?
Yes, it does.
I worked very hard at trying to do that. And I'm in the process of writing the next book, which is the method on how I became so successful. Basically, I started asking myself, how did I do this?
Yeah, right.
And I'm relentless, and there is no such thing as no. And when somebody would shut the door on me, I just open up another door. They shut that door on me, I open up another door. The bottom line is I am going to get a touchdown. And as soon as I get a touchdown, I'm going for another one.
Nice.
That's just the way I'm wired.
Right.
So I wanted, and the next book will show how you can do this also in your life and career. So anyway, the book, it was, the cool thing about writing the book at this point in my life is like, this isn't just about somebody who did something. It's about somebody who did something and is still relevant.
That's right.
That's a big difference in talking. It's not really, it's a memoir up until this point, but
right.
I'm on tour with, Fogerty all the time, the Bodines, Supersonic Blues Machine, which is a blues rock band that features people like Billy Gibbons, Steve Lukather, Robin Ford, Walter Trout, Warren Haynes, whoever guitar players we decide to feature with us. And then there's other bands, and I just did a tribute to Merle Haggard, where Don was the producer, hires me, and I played with John Mellencamp, Keith Richards, Billy Gibbons, Warren Haynes, Loretta Lynn, Kenny Chesney, Hank Jr., Sheryl Crow, on and on and on, just to mention a few. So I'm constantly doing these type of projects, And on top of that, um, I still do a lot of sessions in my studio because the Uncommon Studio is LA. The budgets have changed, so I've made it possible for people to get Kenny Aronoff, and I've got at the a high quality level, but at affordable price.
Yes.
These big rooms can cost as much as $2,500 a day, and I don't charge for my room. I just charge for my time. So that's adjusting to the new business format, you might say.
Yeah.
And so the session thing's still going. Clinic thing has diminished quite a bit, but I just did a 2-week clinic tour through Canada, and I love doing that. The book thing, and I do a lot of speaking now, which is speaking performance, which is basically my life story, and it's very authentic. I mean, because I'm sharing not only what I did, but how you can stay successful in this business. It's one thing to be successful. Once you're successful, that is only a fleeting moment. Fleeting moment.
Yeah.
The next thing is to try to repeat that. And that's difficult. When Jack and Diane, the first number one hit single I ever was on, and when back in the 80s, when you were number one on top 100, that means you were on every station possible.
Right.
You were on TV. We did Saturday Night Live 4 times with Mellencamp. But the second that song went to number one, I only celebrated for 2 seconds. Then my big concern was, can I do this again? Will I do this again? I have to do this again. Oh, are we really that good? Am I really that good? How do you practice playing drums in a simple format where you serve the song? What is the purpose of a drummer? Well, there are all these questions going through my head. And I wanted to repeat this, and I was more concerned about repeating it than the victory of being number one.
Yeah, so I saw some of those videos of you walking back to your drum set, telling those stories, and that, is my career going to be over in a couple of seconds? I guess I'm wondering, not to certainly rest on your laurels, because you're always going to go for that next touchdown.
Right.
But do you also feel like at this point in your career, you have some satisfaction that, I've made it so far, and you're going to keep going? Or is it still like I could lose my job at any moment?
Well, I mean, anybody can lose their job at any moment. Anybody can go through some big life changing experiences. And the way I look at that now that I'm a little bit older and wiser, is that is going to happen. Guaranteed. It's not whether it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And it can happen over and over again. It'll be, whether it's health or tragedy or just getting fired or things not working out. What you have to do is brush that off. That's a given. If it's given, then just move forward. Keep moving forward. And that's what I do. Yes, it feels good that I've had all these accomplishments. The thing that I like the most about it is the wisdom I've learned from all these experiences. It's like one thing, I mean, if I had just made it with John Mellencamp and was still playing with John Mellencamp, that would be a great success story.
Yeah.
But to go off and then play with Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson, Waylon Jennings, Conway Twitty, Loretta Lynn the other day, some of these iconic country artists, the authentic country artists. And then to go off and play with Tony Iommi from Sabbath, and then record with Alice Cooper, and then Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins, in that genre, to then record with Leonard Skinner, and then into the people like Elton John, Rod Stewart, Iggy Pop, Bob Dylan, Bob Seger,
the Stones.
Santana, moving into people like Avril Lavigne, Michelle Branch, and Alanis Morissette, then moving into Buddy Guy, Ray Charles, and B.B. King. I mean, it's not just that I learned how to play with these different artists, but it's more important, it was what I learned from playing with these artists. What I learned with working with all these different producers. I'm not one-dimensional. I have a huge palette of resources that have given me wisdom. That's what I feel most accomplished about. Meeting 4 presidents. It's gone beyond drumming at this point. We're talking about life experiences. And I'm grateful that I was lived in a time where the budgets were so great and the people I was working with were willing to fly me all over the world to make these records or to do these live performances.
Sure.
I'm very, very fortunate, but I'll say this much: dreams do not come true by accident. They do not.
Hard work.
Dreams come true. You have to make your dreams come true. I mean, the greatest dream happened to me was I saw the Beatles when I was 11 years old on TV, and I asked my mom to call the Beatles up, naively thinking I could get the gig. I wanted to be in the Beatles.
Sure.
Well, of course she didn't call them up.
Right.
But 2 weeks later, I created a band and started playing Beatles music because I was so determined to be in the Beatles that I found another way of doing it.
Yeah.
I decided I'd create my own band and I play Beatles music. But here's where the dream comes true. 50 years later, I'm on stage 2 years ago in LA, honoring the Beatles, playing with Ringo Starr and Paul McCartney, honoring them for that TV show, the Ed Sullivan Show that changed America. 72 million people saw it. And so, in a sense, my dream came true.
Yes.
But all that work and all that discipline and that forward motion and that perseverance and never being satisfied and never accepting that I had made it is what made me stay relevant and in the game, and I was fortunate to get the call.
Right.
So a dream came true, but not by accident.
Absolutely. Skill, talent, a lot of hard work, formal education. I mean, you obviously, that first love of music and the drums was Ringo and the Beatles, but you pursued it, and you talk about that in your book. Can you talk about when you went to school and had your education in music?
Well, when I was younger, there was no school of rock and roll. There was not even a drum set teacher that was teaching rock and roll. So I was in bands, like I said, from 11 years old, started my own bands. I would just do it by my ear, but 3 miles from my house was the Boston Symphony Orchestra's summer festival, Tanglewood, Western Mass. So there was a kid in my little town of 3,000 people that was getting better, and I went, wow, what are you doing? I'm studying percussion with Arthur Press from the Boston Symphony Orchestra. So I said, I'm going to do that. Now my first lesson with Arthur went like this. What's your name, son? Kenny. Kenny what? Kenny Aronoff. What have you prepared for me today? I'm like, I prepared nothing. He says, well, do you have a mallet piece you can play? And I said, I don't play mallets. He looked at me like, do you have a timpani piece you can play for me? I said, no. He says, what are you doing here? What do you do?
Wow.
I said, I play drum set. And I was like feeling very, very so humiliated or just embarrassed. So he says, come down here and play on this drum set. So I'd play on the drum set. I think he put Spinning Wheels on by Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And I'd been using headphones and playing along, because I loved Blood, Sweat, and Tears. That was like a big song back then.
Sure.
In 30 seconds, he ripped me off the drum set and pointed me over to a practice pad. Says, that's where we're starting. And he started me from scratch, and he got me into mallets, and then to timpani, and then to a legit snare drum, sight reading in general, theory, you name it.
Yes.
And this was one of those moments, life-changing moments, where I could have gone, you know what, I'm very successful with my rock band.
Yeah.
I'm a super athlete. I was a 3 Letterman jock when I was a sophomore in high school, varsity, guy, and I was popular. So my life was great.
Yeah.
But something told me that this was pertinent and important. So I studied with him, and in the summers, I would practice 4 or 5 hours a day for this guy, because in the summer I could take a lesson every week, where in the winter it was once a month. I'd drive down to Boston. And when it was time to go to college, everybody in my family went to college, and I decided to be a music major. But I felt very behind, because I wasn't part of the marching band or the orchestra at school. I had my own rock band. Why would I want to listen to a squeaky clarinet and out-of-tune flutes and playing? I was playing Hendrix and the Stones and Zeppelin and Cream and Allman Brothers in clubs. Why would I want to play orchestra music?
Sure.
But when it was time to go to college, I wasn't good enough to get into the big 3, Indiana University, Eastman and Juilliard, or Newton Conservatory. But I was good enough to get into University of Massachusetts. And And I got in, and in fear of not being great, when was going to school, the day after I graduated high school, I started an 8-hour practice routine where I would do 3 hours on mallets, 2 hours on timpani, 2 hours on legit snare, and then whatever left was over, I practiced drum set.
Wow.
And sure enough, when I went to UMass, I was far behind. What I did to try to catch up was on Friday and Saturday nights, instead of partying, I would practice until they threw me out of the building. And then I would party at midnight till whenever.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't, as everybody knows, I was not exactly, an angel or a priest.
Yeah.
I had a wild time.
Yeah.
But work always came first to me. I reward myself after I work, not work and then, not party and then work.
Yeah.
It's the other way around.
Yeah.
What I did do, though, that freshman year, even though I wasn't the best, far from the best, I decided I had to be at a better school. Not that UMass was bad, focus was more on education.
Yep.
Eastman School of Music was only 5 hours up the road. I auditioned. I thought I didn't get in, but I did get in. They didn't have room for me as a transfer student.
Okay.
Now, Eastman, remember, was top 3 schools in the country.
Yes.
And John Beck was the teacher. That's where Steve Gadd went. And I was really wanting to be in that environment. Didn't happen. But that's during the year, there was this very hot cellist who said something about going to the Aspen School of Music, run by Juilliard. Top 3 schools in the country.
Yeah.
She was hot. I said, I'm going to go to audition and go where she's going.
Sure.
So the audition was not in person. It was on tape. And they said, prepare 3 pieces out of 4 categories: snare drum, timpani, mallets, multiple percussion. Well, instead of doing 3, I did all 4, to get extra credit maybe. Never heard from them. Last day of school, I had borrowed a xylophone and some other equipment, and I was going to study with Arthur Press, and I had a killer rock band, and my summer was all worked out. I'm leaving UMass in my dad's car, and I'm driving. I'm like, man, I forgot my mail. I got to go back to the dorm and get my mail. I get the mail. I said, oh, it looks like there's a check for me. I open it up. It got accepted to Aspen.
Wow.
Somebody, I think, had to have, at the last minute, said no, because this was 2 weeks before I had to go.
Yeah.
I go home. My mom was so excited that her twin boys, I have a twin brother, were back home from college. And here I am saying I'm leaving. Life-changing moment.
Yes.
Went to Aspen. I was absolutely the worst percussionist there. All these other kids had gone to Oberlin, Juilliard Prep. They were playing marimba and timpani in their diapers. And I was so far behind. But at that school, George Gaber, Professor George Gaber, teacher in percussion, was amazing. This guy was not a hand-holding, coddling type of guy. This guy was ruthless, but very bright, very wise, and very deep, and was concerned about his students, but tolerated no BS.
Kind of a whiplash guy.
He'd slice, dice you. He'd crush you. And he taught at Indiana University, the #1 school in the country for classical music, and the largest. I said I want to audition to come to IU. He said, nah, come back in January. I said, nope, I want to audition. Well, you have to have to audition for 4 separate departments in the school. So he said, let me see if we have teachers from Indiana University at Aspen that would that teach at the school that are from 4 different departments, and there were. Phil Farkas, a French horn, that's brass. There was a violinist, a pianist, and a vocalist, and then George Gabriel, the percussionist. I audition, I get in. So in 1 year, being not the greatest percussionist, I'm not saying I'm not talented, I just hadn't had put in the time. I went from UMass, Eastman, Aspen, Indiana University within 1 year. I go to Indiana University, and I study for 4 years. Now, in my freshman year at UMass, my teacher, Peter Tanner, he wanted to get me into performance because that's what my major was. In 6 weeks, I was performing a simple little flute etude on marimba in front of the whole school. Terrified me. I walked out. I didn't even know. I suddenly realized what's the first note. I'd never even thought about thinking about what's the first note.
Right.
Trust me, I do now. And I performed that piece. And then 5 years later, in March, in my senior year at Indiana University, I performed a huge violin concerto called the Introduction to Rondo Capriccioso by Camille Saint-Saëns that was an encore piece because it was so virtuosic and so beautiful that Itzhak Perlman, the great Israeli violinist, would use as his encore piece.
Wow.
I saw him do that my freshman year at Indiana University. I went, that will be my piece on my senior recital. That'll be my one of 4 pieces. And I spent a year practicing that 2-3 hours a day. And now that I use it in my recital, when my teacher asked me to enter a concerto competition, I entered it and won.
Wow.
So now, when the marimba was rolled out on stage, instead of rolling out in front of a school of, I don't know, however there were 200 people, they were rolling it out in front of a 60-piece orchestra in a venue the size of the New York Met, with 500 to 1,000 people watching me.
Wow.
Tuxedo. This was a huge honor.
Yeah.
Scared to death.
I bet.
Went out there, had to face my fears. Stepped into the fire and kicked some serious butt.
Thanks.
Now, one more thing about my education. I started studying with Vic Firth. And Vic Firth was the type of guy great guy. We became I knew him as a little kid where he was actually taking timpani mallets and putting actually himself putting the felt on it and burning his name in the wood. Amazing. I remember he had only like 3 orchestral snare drum sticks and some mallets. He just beginning to launch his business. And I started studying with him, and he was the type of guy, you make a mistake, he's cool, he'd show you how to do it. If you didn't get it, you're not prepared enough. You have to do it next week. So I started practicing 5 hours a day for him in the summer.
Wow.
That's how I got good on timpani. I auditioned to go to Tanglewood, which is the #1 student orchestra in the country, run by the Boston Symphony Orchestra, and I didn't get in. My audition was horrible. Came back the next year. I'm auditioning for Vic Firth in Boston.
Yeah.
It was better, but it didn't get in. Went back the 3rd time, struck out. Unfortunately, I didn't get it. I did a good audition, but I didn't get in. And I had to make a decision. I have one more chance. I've already done 3. I was humiliated and determined to get in. I auditioned the 4th time and got in. They only take 7 percussionists in the whole world. I was the only one not from the New England Conservatory. It was badass. So I worked with Leonard Bernstein, Aaron Copland, the great American composer. Worked with Sergio Ozawa, who was an incredible conductor, but ruthless and perfectionist. And I worked with Arthur Fiedler and on and on. And that was the highlight of my classical career. And I graduated and achieved a goal, which is what I call the American dream, where you go to school, you study something, and then you get a job in that field. Yeah. And I got in the Jerusalem Symphony Orchestra and Quito, Ecuador Symphony Orchestra, and I had accomplished my goals.
Right.
But I turned it down. I turned it down because I wanted to be in the Beatles. I started studying for the first time at 23 with Alan Dawson in Boston, who taught at the Berklee School of Music for 20 years.
Sure.
Who was a great jazz drummer. And I started studying with Gary Chester, the author of The New Breed, who was basically the Hal Blaine of the East Coast. And I studied with him, and I was practicing 8 hours a day, living at my parents' house, devastated that I was trying to catch up and be a great drummer. And while I'd spent 5 years in school practicing timpani mallets and legit snare and multiple percussion, taking music history, music theory for 4 or 5 years, music, conducting, piano, all this stuff. I felt like, oh my God, what have I done? I wasted my time. I didn't waste my time, but I had a lot of catching up to do.
Yes.
Moved to Indiana, back to Indiana. People were shocked that I would move back there. Formed a band. One of the dads had invested $30,000 into our band as a loan, which we paid back
Wow.
for truck, light, sound, PA, musical equipment, and we lived in a band house and practiced every day, every night. The idea was to get a record deal, go on tour, and be as good as the Beatles.
Sure. Sure.
Didn't happen. So I spent now 4 years investing in my next life goal.
Yeah.
4 years, and I hadn't achieved it yet.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to move to New York, and I heard about this guy Johnny Cougar had just fired his drummer, and I started thinking, my God, that guy's on this new TV show called MTV. I've seen him,
Right.
and I thought, well, the music's kind of basic and simple, and I was trying to be Billy Cobham back then,
Sure.
and I joked and said Billy Cobham almost ruined my career. Not that I would ever sound as good as Billy, but I was trying to catch up to him.
Sure.
And John Mellencamp's music was quite the different.
Yes.
You know, more or less is more.
Right.
So I ended up getting an audition, and they told me to be familiar with the record. And so when someone says be familiar, what that meant to me was, because I was concerned.
Yeah.
I said, listen, but I didn't understand the language that this guy was playing. I'd spent most of my time looking through a telescope this way.
Yes.
Now I was learning to look through a microscope.
Right.
Both worlds are very legitimate, but quite different.
Yes.
And what I did was, being familiar was writing every note out, and I'm very anal at writing my charts out. Here's a chart of my song I'm going to record for Billy Gibbons today. That's what my charts look like.
Wow. Yeah, so you write your own charts here, right?
I write a chart, everything out. The thing is, I can go and sight read this now.
Wow.
And play it with feel like as if I hadn't written it out. The point is, I wrote every note out, studied what was going on, memorized every song, practiced 6-8 hours a day for 2 weeks, auditions, and won the audition. I played 2 songs. John went upstairs in his house and yelled at Mike to come up, and Mike came back down, the guitar player, and smiled at me as I was packing up my drums and went, "Welcome to hell." I went,
okay.
"Yay, what is that?"
Right.
And I found out. So I achieved my second goal, but not so fast, folks. I achieved my second goal. I was in a rock band that was on TV, making records and touring.
Right.
5 weeks later, we had to go to LA to make a record, and I didn't know the purpose of a drummer, or what a purpose of a drummer is for a singer-songwriter like this. And so I was thrown off the record in 2 days. Humiliated. I could not believe it. Don't you understand? I played with Leonard Bernstein. I did a marimba concerto. I'm one of the grad students that came out of IU. But I did know how to make records for an artist to get his record on the radio to be #1.
Can I ask then, Kenny, what was that they let you go about? What was it that they weren't satisfied with that was going on?
Well, I didn't know what the purpose of a drummer is, and the purpose is that in those 5 weeks, this is back when there were budgets, and we could afford to rehearse, develop, throw arrangements out, start again. That's why John made it. We worked our butts off. We practiced from 11 in the morning to 5 at night.
Sure.
Take a 2-hour dinner break, come back and practice 7 to 11. 5 days a week. That's how you make it.
Right.
If you do nothing, you get nothing. It's basic math. 0 equals 0. If you're the person that's waiting for something to come from the sky and the heavens and land on you and you become successful, you're delusional. It won't happen. And if it did, you wouldn't even recognize it or be able to handle it. Most likely because you have to put in the time. There's no shortcuts. You don't work, you can't play.
Right.
If you play, all you're doing is playing. I mean, you got to work to be successful. So when we were rehearsing and John was looking for drum parts, he'd play a song on acoustic guitar. Still, one of the most challenging things is when somebody plays a song on acoustic guitar and you've got to come up with a direction for that song with simple skills, nothing fancy. It's got to be a beat, a feel, a sound, a vibe, a texture, a scene in a movie, a color, a smell. You have to create that on the drum set. It's got to create this thing, this atmosphere. I didn't know anything about that. So I didn't know my ideas were coming from a more complex vocabulary.
Yes.
So John saw that and sensed it. I was not giving him what he wanted. The producer came out and saw what was going on. Not only was um, there was a little bit of tension between me and John. I was a little uptight because I didn't feel like I didn't understand exactly what was going on and the purpose, once again, of a drummer.
Sure.
When you're trying to make records like that, yeah, the beat, the time, the groove, but the big picture, folks, is get that person's song on the radio to be number one. Because if it's number one, the artist, the band makes a lot of money. If you were hired by Microsoft, what's your purpose? The purpose is to make Microsoft millions of dollars. You're an employee that's there to make money for the company. If you're a drummer in a band or a guitar player or a bass player, or you're hired as a session drummer, your job is to make that song successful. Why? So they can be successful, make money, and keep their career going. That's your job. Every thought, every idea, every cymbal, every drum, it's not about you. It's about them, the song, the corporation. That's the big picture.
Yeah.
That's what's going on.
Serving
but
the
nobody
music.
tells you that. Not in the music business. They just expect you to know it.
Right.
I didn't know that. So, not only that, but in the 70s, single-headed toms were popular.
Yes.
You know, they put the mics like Phil Collins,
Right.
Gino Vanellis drummers all had those. It was a sound. It was a real tight sound. I had single-headed toms, and in 1980, when I came to LA, it all had switched Gretsch drums, coated Ambassador, Remo head on top, clear on the bottom, tone. It was like completely the opposite of my sound.
Right.
The other thing is, back then, as a drummer, you had to be able to play one take from beginning to end, perfectly in time, perfect feel, perfect parts, perfect everything.
Wow.
Because then, once they had the perfect drum track, they could overdub or fix anything else.
Yes.
You could punch in drums, but only to a certain extent. It wasn't like Pro Tools, where you can take an average or not even a great drummer and make him sound really good.
Right.
Back then, you had to be good.
Yeah.
You had to be able to read, you had to be able to, or at least be able to play perfectly
Yes.
from beginning to end.
That's right.
And I've taken that skill set and still maintain that that's the way I like to record. I want full takes. Because there's something about if you're an actor and you're acting in a scene, you get a full take. It's a performance.
Sure.
It's uncomparable, and nobody can program as fast as I can play a 3.5-minute song.
That's right. That's right.
With the right feel, the right dynamics, and if a producer says, hey man, that's great, but could you just change this second verse to that? No problem, let's do it again, bam. Okay, now in the third chorus, I want you to do this, no problem, let's do it again. And then whatever they want, I can adjust with the hands and the feet and the brain.
Right.
It's a skill that you develop, and you have to put in the time.
Yes.
So I didn't have that skill right then. So John Mellencamp invites me down for a band meeting at the Chateau Marmont, very famous rock and roll hotel in Sunset Strip.
Right.
And I just had Easter Sunday lunch there with my wife, and I looked up and I said, that's the room I was in when I got fired.
Wow.
Right
Wow.
there.
Yeah. Amazing.
I got fired. John explains to me, well, you know, you haven't had a lot of experience, and he's going on and on, making records. I'm going, nope, 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 nope. And I screamed at him, no, I'm not going home.
Wow.
He's shocked. I was shocked.
Yeah.
I didn't realize I was this fight or flight guy.
Mm.
I thought I was a fight or flight guy.
Yeah.
I'm like, no way, I'm not going home.
Wow.
Like, no way. I can't play in the Beatles. I'm going to be in my own Beatles.
Right.
I didn't think about it. When I wrote my book, I went back and went, wow, you're this kind of guy, you know? So I had to scramble on my feet and I went, well, I was humiliated. I was embarrassed. I didn't want to go home. I told everybody I was making this record.
Right.
I was successful. It was horrible.
Yeah.
So I went, well, am I still the drummer in your band? And John looked perplexed and went, yeah. And I'm like, well, then I'm going to go to the studio and watch these guys play my drum parts. It was Rick Slosher and Ed Green, great session guys in LA. And I'm going to learn from them and I'll benefit from that. And then you're going to benefit because I'm your drummer. And he didn't know what to say. And I said, and here's what sealed the deal. I went, and you don't have to pay me.
There you go.
And I'll sleep on the floor. And he didn't pay me. And I slept on a bed. But I was there for a month, and I was humiliated. I was embarrassed. I felt ashamed.
Sure.
It was a life-changing experience for me. I went home and set up an 8-hour practice routine, started lifting weights heavy, running, turned into a vegetarian. I was just trying to revamp my whole thing and get serious.
Sure.
And my goal was to make the next record. And the bottom line is the next record was American Fool. It was the hardest record I've ever made. We spent 9 weeks in the studio, and they were all up my butt because, you know what happened last time. So I was very nervous, had to stay very focused.
Yeah.
2 people got fired on the record, out of the band. I almost got a fist fight with John. John was fighting for his career. He'd already lost a record deal. I didn't realize why John was like this. He was fighting to keep a career. They'd already changed his name from John Mellencamp to Johnny Cougar, which was humiliating for him to go back home to his, Southern Indiana family, and they're all going, what's wrong with your real name, John? Well, this is my name now if I want to have a record deal. And then he gets dumped. So he was fighting for his life.
Sure.
I was fighting for my life, but I was thinking only of me, and he was fighting for his life, period, which affected me. Bottom line is, one day they come in with, Jack and Diane, which became a #1 hit single, still played today, which features me. There was no drums on the song. We didn't know what to do with the song. It was off the record, gone, history. Really? Somebody comes in with a drum machine. I'm like, get that thing out of here. I don't want a drum machine replacing me.
Right,
this is back in '81. So I grabbed the machine. It's a Lin 1 drum machine. I programmed these parts that are basically mimicking what I was doing on the drum set, and I go back into the control room, into the lounge, play pool. I'm like, cannot believe I'm being replaced by a drum machine. I'm, pissed off.
Sure.
And then I get called in. They want a drum solo. I'm like, a drum solo on a ballad? And I'm thinking, what would Buddy Rich say?
Sure.
I know what Buddy Rich would say. Get rid of the song. It stinks.
Right.
But I'm not Buddy Rich, so I'm like, wow, what am I gonna do? This is like little ditty about Jack and Diane. 2 young kids living in the heartland. Oh yeah, life goes on. That ain't gonna happen. So we spend a whole day getting this big drum sound because everybody's been recording drums in vocal booths. Yeah. Now John puts the drums in a big room. We got close mics, overheads, and room mics, and we were learning how to blend mics. This was all new. Sure. You know what John's goal was? To make any song that came on the radio get blown off the radio by us, dwarfed by our power. And any song that came after us to get blown off the radio and dwarfed by our power and volume. Sure. Well, that meant every instrument loud. That was so cool. John was so forward thinking. I love it. We were actually matched real well because we were both very like this.
Yes.
So, I have to come up with this solo. I won't bore you with the details, but I had to come up with a solo on the spot in the fear of losing my job. I was starting to learn the purpose of being a player, a drummer for this type of music. So my entrance was and 4, kick drum on the end of 3, and the snare drum flam on 4, boom, blam. And I stop, and they all go, awesome, because I made a statement. Yeah. And then I decided instead of going down the drums, I'd go up the drums, the toms. First, I don't know what happened. It wasn't working out. Well, now I'm telling the story. I'm in the control room. Everyone's telling me what they should do, and I'm thinking, whatever. The bottom line is I have to go out there and save my career.
Right.
And I remember walking back there going, man, what are you going to play, man? I don't know. And I'm like trying to figure this out. I'm like, you can't play what you play. What are you going to play? I said, I don't know. I'm talking to myself. I turn around and I don't know. What popped in my head was start that drum beat that you were doing, which was mimicking the kick drum. Boom, 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 God, boom, boom, boom. One end up to the end, beat one on the one, the of one on the, this is on the kick drum, and then the and of two. And so instead of going up the toms playing on the downbeat, I just moved it over an eighth note. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 1, They flipped over that. I hit, John says screams, hit a cymbal, Then I kind of copy Phil Collins, run out of drums, and I put a triple in it, ba boom, boom, boom. Touchdown.
There you go.
And I did this groove. And believe it or not, some of it was influenced by the part I played and going to the floor tom on beat 4. Was me trying to copy Steve Gadd on a recording he did with Chick Corea. I think the song was Lenora. He was playing this cool Mozambique beat. A 4. And I thought, I was still listening to a lot of, complex drumming, and Steve Gadd was a huge influence to me. So just taking that one idea, putting it on the floor, then opened up my hi-hat, created this. So let it rock, so let it roll. It was like it became, huge. Number one hit. I found out that song went to number 1 in the same room, same hotel I got fired in.
Oh God! complete turnaround.
And my celebration lasted, like I said, 2 seconds, and I was immediately thinking, can I do this again? And I was concerned, and I felt like, how do you practice playing simple? How do you practice coming up with simple ideas? It's much easier to practice technique.
Right. Another story you talk about in the book, Sex, Drums, and Rock and Roll, which I was reading and really fascinated, because one of my favorites by you guys is Rain on the Scarecrow. And you said you took some of that, just like you did with Steve Gadd, with David Bowie's Let's Dance. And I listened to it and I went, that makes total sense. I mean, how did you think of that?
Well, I was listening to David Bowie at that time, and they had the song, Let's Dance, and the beat is let's dance, come put on your, well, it's faster than that. And I thought, well, I can't copy that exactly, but what I did was this is the way I do things. I look at things the way they are, and then I twist them. So instead of starting from scratch, I went, I like that. The next measure, instead of going got the 3, wait, got got I left the of 1 out, and the second measure. So I go got 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 boom bum 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 boom bum rain on it's listen to Rain on the Scarecrow. That's what it is.
It's a great song.
And then when I get to the chorus of Rain on the Scarecrow, I just do one measure, the second measure of my 2-measure phrase, not what Omar Hakim did. So I go was it the pre-chorus? I take simple ideas and move them around and create a musical drum part.
Absolutely.
Yes, technically easy. Coming up with those ideas under pressure. I don't know if I mentioned the Crumbling Down story where John had already made a record. It was done. It was mastered. John went, it's not good enough. I got to come up with another single. I did that for Avril Lavigne too, and both of them ended up being huge singles.
Wow.
Crumbling Down, John said, I'm coming over to your house right now. And he walks in and he goes, listen, this could be the first single. Do not mess this song up. I'm like,
no pressure.
I'm so nervous. And he plays. So I went with my hands and feet, no sticks. I put the hi-hat in that little hole. Doom 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 doom. Some people are no damn good. Really cool. I've never played a beat like that, and never played since. And that was setting it up for what comes next, was full on.
Right.
And song became a huge hit, but it was always a lot of pressure coming up with simple ideas like that.
Well, that's part of your creativity, right? I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, it was a learned skill. I still get, yeah, I mean, it's still, it's, I now feel comfortable in that if I have enough time, I will come up with something. There's always another way to do something. The pressure is when you don't have time and you've got to, and what I advise people, if you're under pressure like that and you've got to come up with something, like I'll play with, I remember playing with Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys. I was trying to describe this thing I want to do. I orchestrated this thing with all kinds, 36-inch bass drum, cap scan, and some this and some that. And he told me something, and I didn't understand what he said. I couldn't figure out what he was saying. What I did, though, is instead of just trying to ask him again, which I thought would maybe blow the whole session, was I just played something. Play something, and then let them comment on it.
Wow.
Keep the engagement going.
Yes. Well, and I mean, and speaking of Brian Wilson, I mean, one of the impressions that I got from reading your book is you really are the modern day Hal Blaine, aren't you? I mean, you've played with so many people and on so many records. On my Facebook page, Musicians on the Record, I promoted the interview, asking people to have some questions that they would ask you.
Sure.
And Joshua VP on Facebook asks about how the sessions went with Bon Jovi, and did you get to have input as a full member, or were your drum parts already ready?
I had a lot of input. It was great recording with John Bon Jovi. There's a killer story in the book about that, how I almost didn't do that record. I don't know if you got that far. It's great. Killer story. But there was a lot of stuff programmed, but then because back then we were budgets, I had creative license to do what I thought was right. And, there was two producers, John Bon Jovi and Danny Korchmar. So that whole thing in Blaze of Glory was my coming up with that. There's a march in the middle. I overdubbed 4 snare drums. Everybody was looking at me like I'm crazy. Had a piccolo, tuned them differently, had them slow the tape down.
Wow.
Or speed it up, and then I'd play it, and then they'd slow it down to have a low. I had 4 snare drums going. Stuff like that I was really good at, coming up with creative, different ideas to get effects. And because that was just a breakdown with no snare drum. And I created that whole marching beat. So yeah, I was creative, and I was, paid as a session player. I wasn't a member of the band, but it was great hang.
Yeah, and sounds like you certainly came up with your parts. That wasn't all written out for you. That's fantastic. No. Yeah, and Kayla Landry from Facebook wanted to know, just to hear some of the stories you've played a number of times at the Kennedy Center Honors, but you did
7 times.
7 times, amazing. You did an incredible one a couple of years ago when Zeppelin was awarded the honor. You played Whole Lotta Love with Lenny Kravitz and Ramble On with Kid Rock. And I noticed also when I went back, you also started like when Zeppelin did with Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You into Ramble On. You started with that little part. What was that like?
Well, first of all, when I got the call, I was in somewhere, I can't remember, I was in Canada on tour or something, and it was getting late, and it was August, and I emailed the producer of the show, or texted him. I said, dude, what's going on with the Kennedy Center Honors? He said, we're going to rock and roll with some Black Dog. I went, are you kidding?
Wow.
It went, a whole lot of love, baby. I went, oh my God, Zeppelin.
Yeah.
So I was going to be playing everything. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to play Black Dog. Whole Lot of Love, Stairway to Heaven,
Yeah.
rock and roll. I mean, I know
Wow.
all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then, and then they said, Club said, dude, we got Foo Fighters doing. I went, oh, what are they doing? Black Dog and Whole Lot, Black Dog and Rock and Roll. I went, whoops, guess I'm not playing those two.
Right.
And then they said, and Stairway to Heaven. They said, what do you think? You think the Wilson sisters would be good at that? I went, are you kidding?
Yeah.
They're the best at that.
Sure.
They're killer.
Yeah.
Says, well, Jason Bonham is free that day, so we're thinking of putting Jason on. Says, well, you gotta have Jason.
Sure.
So that's how that came together. But man, just to be playing Whole Lot of Love
Yeah.
with Lenny Kravitz facing the Zeppelin guys,
Yeah. Yeah.
honorable.
You killed
I talked
it.
to Jimmy Page after. I said, how'd you feel about us? Because we did Ramble On a little differently.
Yeah.
And we know that we do it different. He said, oh, we love that you do that.
Yeah.
That's what we used to do every night.
That's right.
We used to do it different. We'd improvise. We'd just go for it. He was a total, artiste. It was great.
Right. Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Absolutely. Amazing. And my wife and I just watched the Joe Cocker movie the other night, Mad Dog and Soul. And what an incredible artist Joe Cocker was, right? Can you talk a little bit about you toured with him, right?
10 years, on and off, 10 years.
10 years.
And recorded with him. I recorded an album with him and played live with him. He used to ride on the bus with us.
Wow.
We used to play this game called Stew. I think that's not in the book because, they take something out.
Sure.
He was the coolest guy, real badass musician.
Yes.
He really knew music. Very few people can do what he did.
Right.
He could take a Beatle song and make it sound like he wrote it.
Right.
I came in through the bathroom window.
Yeah.
The way he sang it.
Right.
Little help from my friend.
Incredible.
At Woodstock.
Right.
It sounds like he wrote the song.
That's right.
And he did a Delta Lady, that Leon Russell wrote.
Right.
This guy could take songs and make them his own.
Yeah.
His voice was so amazing in your ears.
Yeah.
Nobody's sang like him.
Right.
Singing songs like "You Are So Beautiful."
Oh, amazing. Right.
God.
Yeah. Incredible. Yeah. And
Iconic. I got to play with one of the greatest legends ever.
yeah, no question. Yeah, and you've played with a lot. You play. You look up from your drum set and there's John Mellencamp, but later you look up from your drum set and there's John Fogerty from CCR. That's just mind blowing in and of itself. What's that like? You're playing, Who'll Stop the Rain and Lodi and incredible.
As a little kid, the Beatles were my first big love, but I was like looking at CCR records and reading comic books and listening to CCR records. And
Sure.
if I never thought that I would be drumming with him.
Right.
I was the 30th drummer that he had play on his Blue Moon Swamp record that won a Grammy. He had spent 5 years trying to get back into writing songs, spent another 5 years recording.
Wow.
10 years.
Amazing.
I was the 30th drummer. He used everybody in LA and Texas. He used what's his name? Spacing. A lot of drummers. And when I finally came into the fold, he looked at me and went, "You're the drummer I've been looking for my whole life." And I've played with him ever since.
It's incredible.
I went off to do the Pumpkin store. He got a replacement, and another time he got somebody. But pretty much I've been his guy and touring and making records. It's been unbelievable. Those songs are some of the greatest.
Yeah.
People like Springsteen sitting with us. They just who doesn't respect John Fogerty as the singer, songwriter, producer, guitar player, vocalist for Creedence Clearwater.
Absolutely, yeah, iconic, right? And I have to ask you. Obviously, you mentioned it a little earlier. Your night with Paul and Ringo. You must have just been a happy little kid at that point of your heroes.
Here's how I deal with situations like that. And I had met Paul, and me, Ringo, Paul, Don was, and maybe two other guys had a big conversation before the show, which was cool for 30 minutes.
Wow.
Real friendly hangout, talking about what it was like for them in Hamburg and going to the music stores and the whole thing. And they thought they were old. They were smoking cigarettes. They were in their young 20s, but they thought they were already an old band.
Right.
And they come over here, and right before he goes on stage at the iconic Ed Sullivan show, a guy goes, "How does it feel like to be playing in front of 72 million people?" Slapped them on the back and pushed them out. You go, what?
Yeah, right.
They had no idea. The way I dealt with that show and the way I deal with shows like this when I'm playing with my heroes is I forget about, no, what I focus on is my job. Like as if I'm saving somebody's life. You just focus on the job. You just do your job, like a Marine or a Navy SEAL. You do your job, afterwards I celebrate. So before every song, I've got a click in my head, I'm practicing the count off, I'm practicing the groove. I know when to count off. It's usually something, I just know when to count off. To keep the flow going, and I count off as soon as the song's done. I've reset my metronome. I'm already into the next song, grooving. I don't look at the audience with a million famous Hollywood people out there. I'm focusing on my job, the next song. All I want to do is execute and win the Super Bowl, as it might be, you know?
Yes.
And when I'm done in that show, I'm extremely happy. There was only one scary moment. It was with Stevie Wonder. We were doing We Can Work It Out, and his cue to end it, we had to go something like da-da-da or da-da-da. His cue was now, just like that. Da-da. So you're going, we can work it out. We can work it out. We're just looking at him like, whoa, what's he doing? 1, 2, da-da, like that.
Yeah.
When I turned around and looked at Greg Phillips, we did it. We nailed it. And then Steve goes, I want to do it again.
Okay.
We nailed it again. Nailed it again. It's like getting a home run, and they go, yeah, I went on the wrong side of the pole. So you got to do it again.
Wow.
You know, or kicking a field goal like from 64 yards, impossible. It gets it, and there was a penalty. You have to do it again.
Right. Yeah, they called the timeout.
Anyway, that was there. And at the end, I had a great conversation with Ringo. He was so appreciative that I had done my homework and really emulated his style of playing.
Yeah.
Really well. Greatest compliment ever. I mean, I told him, dude, it all started from you.
Right.
You, I saw you.
Right. Absolutely. So you got Ringo. Who else were your major, at least drummer influences, Kenny?
Well, a lot of jazz drummers, because my dad, you know, that's all they had on the turntable, classical music and jazz. So, you know, Buddy Rich, Elvin Jones, Philly Joe Jones, Louis Bellson, Gene Krupa, you know, what's his name, from Dave Brubeck, you know, Joe Morello,
yeah.
Connie Kay. I saw these guys all the time.
Wow.
But then the drummer that really blew me out was Mitch Mitchell from Hendrix, because he was basically a jazz drummer.
You bet.
Playing rock, and I could relate to that.
Yeah.
He still blows me away.
Yeah.
Of course, John Bonham and Ginger Baker, but Mitch Mitchell was the jazziest of them all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unbelievable.
Do you ever, you know, I imagine maybe earlier in your career with maybe nerves? I mean, you've talked about some of that adrenaline going. Do you ever get nervous now, or is it just like you said, I do my job, and that's what helps you focus?
I don't get nervous at all. All I do is get serious.
Mm-hmm.
I get serious, and I'm very aware of the job that's coming ahead of me, and I realize that things can go wrong. The Kennedy Center Honors took me to another level. It wasn't just about drumming anymore. It was a whole nother level of understanding your place on the team, how to win a Super Bowl, how to deal with adversity, how to deal with mistakes, how to solve problems on the spot. With a 16-camera shoot, and it isn't all about stick to it and wow anymore. This is a serious job. Still look good, still look professional, still perform, but the job at hand is not about me. It's about getting this team, this organization to win the Super Bowl.
Right.
That's the way I look at it. That's serious business.
Absolutely.
And still maintaining fun though.
Right.
So now I don't get nervous. I just get serious, and I'm aware of what I have to do. I'm friendly and stuff, but you know, and I never ever really got intimidated that much, except for the big guys who wanted to kick my ass in high school. But I talk about it in my book. My uncle Matt was intimidating. I was a little guy, you know, I was 11 or 12. He came over Thanksgiving, this one particular Thanksgiving I'll never forget. Came over, This guy was a Golden Gloves boxer,
Wow.
Navy pilot. He was poor, became a millionaire in the 70s. Had planes, boats.
Amazing.
He was like a living superhero.
Yeah.
And he was my uncle.
Wow.
He's doing one-handed push-ups, smoking a cigar, laughing at me. He stood up and says, "Hey kid, you know what the most important thing in life is?" I looked at his gold watch and said, "Money?" He said, "No, stupid. Time is the most important thing." That's what he told me.
Yeah.
And I went, "Time? I just want to go out and play with my brother."
Right.
And then I realized later on how important time was, just showing up on time, being on time.
Yes.
And then I realized, keeping time as a drummer. And now I realize life, time. How do you want to spend your time?
Absolutely.
How do I want to spend my time? Personally, I wish I had 300 years more because I have a list of things I want to accomplish, and it takes time. Listen, Penn and Teller, I heard, they'll spend 6 years just on one trick.
Wow.
6 years. Now, 6 years times 3 tricks is 18 years. I mean, there's a time factor right there.
Right.
Time is the most valuable thing we have.
Yep.
And so this is kind of a great way to end this whole thing. It's like, I ask people how you want to spend your time. Time is valuable. Even if you want to take a vacation, take it 100%. That's a valuable way to spend your time. But when you're working, you work your butt off.
Right.
And if you want things to happen in your life, you have to make them happen. And time is a factor.
Absolutely. Well, Kenny Aronoff, we thank you for your time on Musicians on the Record. Great interview. Thank you so much, Kenny.
Awesome, Dave. Take care. I'm going to go and record a couple Billy Gibbons songs.